I'm in the process of installing a minor lift, more of a leveling kit. Nothing too involved or expensive. Simply some spacers, both front and rear. Give it an extra 2 inches in the front, inch in the back, again to level it out, make room for some different offset wheels and tires. So that's what's going on here. Taking apart the suspension so I can get to the coilover, take it out to put the spacer in. These have already been replaced. They were silver. They were bashed in on a couple of them, so I liked the black look. But I don't want to go black all over, and you'll see that later. I'm going to replace the grill, the headlights. I was going to refinish, but you can see this one's been hit by a rock, so headlights are going to have to be replaced. I'm going to replace the side marker lights as well. This piece on the bottom of the front bumper is scarred and broken here, so that's going to be replaced as well. I don't like huge modifications. I like modifications here and there to enhance, but not really replace a lot of the nice features that made it look good from the factory. So, but that's where we're going right now. You can see what it looks like at this point. At some point, the paint is going to need some work. Some panels repainted. Certainly some door dings taken out. I don't know if you can see that, but it's definitely got some door. Oh yeah, you can see that one. Definitely some door dings here and there. But again, I think it's going to be a worthwhile project and look good when it's done. But that's kind of the stock look right now, and we'll see if we can enhance that. We've installed the leveling kit. The stance looks good. I'm good with the factory ride. This is used more as a daily driver versus a going off-road all the time. It does go off-road some of the time, more of a weekend warrior type of thing. So we went with the leveling kit by Rough Country, part number 763. Comes with instructions. Overall, good build, good quality. I've heard mixed reviews about Rough Country, but this turned out to be pretty well. One thing though about it, and I'll talk about it in my tips, is looks like it's mainly meant for a 4Runner, and I will talk about the difference for the FJ. Tip number one when installing this kit or any lift kit is use the jacks to your advantage. Lower them, raise them to make it easier for ball joints and tie rod ends to take apart. This tool here, I've talked about it in another video. I really like it. It's called a ball joint separator, but I actually like it for tie rods as opposed to ball joints. With the ball joint, I just used this under the lower control arm while I had the rest of the vehicle supported with this jack, and that worked well to remove those. So that's tip number one. Tip number two is just go ahead and pick up some new end links for the sway bars. You're going to need them every time you remove them when you're installing some kind of a lift kit. You end up needing those because of trying to keep them in place while you're removing them. These aren't the best in my opinion. I like the ones that are greasable, but these are basically factory replacements. Happens every time I do it with an FJ or a 4Runner or a Tacoma. Next tip is get a pry bar. You can see what I have here. Big, long, about 7 foot piece of metal that is good and heavy, and it does really well. And It's even a little bent, but that's okay. It still works. You're going to need that because you're adding inches to the suspension. So you're going to need that. We use that both in the front and the back. For the front, we put it under the lower control arm to add some room so we could place the coil over back in. But in the rear, we needed to put it on the axle so that we could add some space to put the rear springs back in. So whether you get that Mondo one at Harbor Freight or you get something like this, which is something we had lying around, you're going to need it. Next tip for installing a lift on these vehicles is something that you don't necessarily have to have, but it sure came in handy. This is a mid-length socket. So it's not your regular socket. It's not a deep well. It's a mid-length, and came in very handy for tightening the upper shock mount bolts on the front, because there's limited clearance, but they still stick up above the bolt where you're tightening the nut. So these things come in real handy. You can tighten it to the proper torque with these. Otherwise, you're probably pretty much using a wrench, preferably a ratcheting wrench. Final tip is specifically with the rough country kit, and this is why I believe it likely works better for the 4Runner. These aren't the exact hardware. This is obviously a little smaller and rustier. Well, not rustier, just used, as opposed to the ones that come in the kit. But what they describe in the kit is that you take this bolt and you put it on top of the plate where the spring rests, and so it goes in like that, and then you put a locking nut and you twist it onto the bottom with the bolt protruding. Well, that might work for a 4Runner, but it doesn't work for the FJ because the body's in the way. So what I had to do was I had to take the nut and put it on the top, get a 19 millimeter wrench and hold it in place, and then run this. And of course, there's a washer underneath the nut, and then there's a washer you're supposed to put on the bolt too. But that's on top, and then I had to run this up through that with the spacer, and the spacer's got some weight to it. Obviously, it's metal. So with this operation here on the FJ, an impact was absolutely essential. So what I did was I used the impact that I use these days for the wheels and everything else, of course. The high torque Milwaukee, and so I didn't mess around with it. I was able to get that thing in there and tighten that thing to 100 foot-pounds. But something to be aware of if you're using that rough country kit, you need to be prepared for this hardware. So I wanted to show you the finished stance. You can see it's just a tad higher in the rear, but in the front it's a definite noticeable difference. I like that level look a lot better. You can see that. And then the installation itself, you can see the spacer. It's just the aluminum metal colored. You have the option to get in the red, but I didn't want that. I'm not trying to call attention to it. And that's okay. Frankly, I'd rather it be black. And there's the other side, same type of thing. I've already driven it just a little with the stock wheels and tires, and it's nearly stock, maybe just a tad bit stiffer. Some have noted in other comments that it doesn't nosedive as much when you're braking. That's certainly true. It's just got a little less travel there, a little higher up, so it doesn't nosedive as much. But no, again, I like the stock factory ride, so definitely pleased so far. Here we have a view with the wheel and tire removed. You can see where we've replaced the sway bar end link. Again, on any lift kit that I've ever installed, Tacoma, Tundra, FJ, you end up having to replace that link for some reason. But once you replace it, hopefully you can save it next time. This one's more like the factory though, so who knows. But there's that, just cleaned up the strut area. Then again, you can see the spacer there. It's rough country. It seems like a pretty good kit. I've heard their shocks and coilovers aren't as good. Whenever I replace shocks and coilovers, it's usually Bilstein or something better than that. So if I do any more than just the leveling kit, that's what I would do. Halfway through the real reason for the lift, a wheel and tire swap. It's looking good so far, but wanted to show you halfway through with the -10 offset, they just barely peek around the fenders. Gives it a little bit more aggressive look. But you can see in the rear with the stock fully tucked under the fender. Just to kind of give you an idea of what that looks like. All right, and here we are with the white wheels on the FJ. I haven't put the one on the back yet because I need to configure a couple things back there, but I think it turned out well. Accentuating the white instead of going away from it. I see a lot of FJs with more black than anything, so I like the look. Next step, we're going to make some changes on the front as well. Go with that OEM Plus look. Thanks for watching.